All right, ready to dive in? We're tackling a world of white powder and fast living today.
Uh-huh.
But not the Hollywood version you might be picturing.
Right.
We're going deep, deep on cocaine,
Absolutely.
separating the myths from the molecules, the historical hype from the hard science. You guys got your Wikipedia articles ready.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it's a wilder ride than any movie.
It really is. What I think is so fascinating about cocaine is how much it reveals about us, Like our cultures and our understanding of the brain even our global networks.
Oh, we're going there. From like ancient rituals to those cartel documentaries everybody's watching these days. But first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. When we say cocaine, what are we actually talking about?
Yeah, so at its core, cocaine is a chemical, an alkaloid. It's extracted from the coca plant.
Okay.
So think of those leaves like these little chemical factories, and we've just figured out how to concentrate their product, so to speak, into a really potent powder. Usually cocaine hydrochloride. That's the kind you see in like a movie.
Okay, so it's natural, but it's super concentrated. I'm guessing that's where the potent part comes in.
Yeah.
What is it that makes this plant extract so powerful?
It all comes down to your brain. Cocaine basically messes with how your brain handles dopamine. Dopamine, the feel-good chemical.
Right.
So imagine your brain is like a sponge, and it normally soaks up that dopamine after it's released.
Right.
But cocaine blocks that sponge.
Ah.
So the dopamine just floods your system.
Whoa, a dopamine overload. So that's the high everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
But hold on. We got to rewind a bit. Before the labs and all this neurochemistry stuff, people were using coca for ages.
Centuries, actually. Imagine you're an Incan, right? Living high up in the Andes Mountains, chewing on coca leaves helped with the altitude, helped people stay warm, even work longer. It was woven into their daily lives.
Wow, so we went from everyday life to illegal substance. That's quite the shift. When did things go from ancient tradition to, like, Miami Vice?
Yeah, the 1800s were a huge turning point. That's when scientists first isolated pure cocaine, and suddenly everyone thought it was this wonder drug, Remember all those old-timey ads for coca wine?
Oh, yeah.
Cures headaches, boosts your energy. They claimed it could do it all.
It's wild how perceptions change, right? Yeah. We went from, like, miracle cure to dangerous drug.
Totally.
So when did that happen? When did the dangers of cocaine become clear?
Well, as the 20th century kind of rolled in, so did stricter regulations,
Yeah.
And the initial concern was addiction. But over time, the narrative really shifted towards the crime and violence that were associated with cocaine, particularly in the U.S.
And with good reason, right? The illegal drug trade comes with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
But before we get to all of that, there's another side to this whole story. The science of addiction itself. Why is cocaine so hard to quit? Even when you know it's bad for you.
Well, remember that dopamine flood we were talking about?
Yeah.
Well, your brain loves that feeling. The problem is cocaine is like that friend who always throws the wildest parties, right? Eventually, you need more and more to get that same thrill.
And just like that, you're hooked.
Exactly.
It's incredible how our brains are kind of wired to seek that pleasure, even when it comes with risks. And speaking of risks, there's more to it than just, getting addicted. We're talking different ways to use it, each with its own level of danger, right?
Exactly. The most common method is snorting. So that's absorbing it through the nasal membranes.
Right.
But here's the thing. Cocaine makes your blood vessels constrict, so it actually takes longer to feel the effects.
So it's a slower burn, but it lasts longer.
Right. But then you have injection, which is like mainlining dopamine straight into your bloodstream.
Oh, wow.
The high is really intense, but it's fleeting, and the risks through the roof. Overdose, infections, you name it.
And let's not forget the infamous speedball mixing cocaine with heroin.
Oh, yeah.
Dangerous cocktail. Claimed its fair share of lives.
Sadly, yeah. And then there's smoking crack cocaine, which is basically free-base cocaine that's been processed to be smoked. It vaporizes really easily, giving it almost instant, like incredibly intense high.
But what goes up must come down.
Exactly. And with crack, that down hits hard and fast, makes the cycle of craving and use even more brutal.
Wow.
Plus, you have serious respiratory risks to think about.
So we've got a substance that hijacks your brain's reward system, comes with a whole laundry list of risks depending on how you use it, and has a history that's like intertwined with everything from ancient rituals to modern medicine. It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And we're just getting started.
Yeah, it really shows you the two sides of cocaine, Like, here we have this thing that can be so destructive, but it's also got this whole legitimate medical history.
It's true. It's true. It's easy to forget that cocaine wasn't always seen as this dangerous drug.
Right.
Like back in the late 19th century when they first isolated it, doctors thought they'd stumbled onto a miracle drug.
It was revolutionary, really. I mean, can you imagine surgery before they had effective anesthetics?
Oh, gosh.
It was brutal. Cocaine let doctors numb specific areas,
Right.
made those procedures way more bearable.
It's hard to, fathom the pain and suffering people went through before that. So how is cocaine used medically today?
Yeah.
There have got to be safer alternatives now, right?
You're right. Safer alternatives have mostly replaced cocaine for most procedures,
Yeah.
but it still has some niche uses, particularly in ophthalmology and ENT surgeries.
I remember reading about cocaine eye drops.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Yeah, right?
What are they even used for?
They're actually super useful for diagnosing certain conditions,
Okay.
like Horner syndrome.
Okay.
It affects the nerves in your eye.
Gotcha.
Basically, cocaine dilates the pupil in a healthy eye,
Right.
but not as much in an affected one. So it helps, pinpoint the problem.
So it acts as a kind of a diagnostic tool.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
What about the ENT surgeries you mentioned?
So cocaine can be used topically during those procedures because it constricts blood vessels.
Right.
So it helps control bleeding.
Okay.
Plus, it's still a very effective local anesthetic.
So in very controlled settings with the very specific applications, cocaine can actually be a valuable tool.
Totally.
It really just underscores how complex this whole thing is.
Yeah.
But of course, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, trafficking.
Yeah, you're right.
So we touched on the major smuggling routes earlier, but how do these criminal organizations even operate on such a massive scale? It just boggles the mind.
I mean, these are sophisticated organizations.
Yeah.
They often have really complex hierarchies.
Yeah.
Vast resources. And a ruthlessness that's honestly pretty chilling. They use violence, intimidation. They have to maintain control.
Right.
And they have to adapt constantly to evade law enforcement.
It's like a whole other world, operating outside the law with its own rules and this brutal system of enforcement.
In a way, it is.
Yeah.
And the stakes are so high. We're talking billions of dollars. And the very real risk of violence, not just for those involved, but for entire communities that get caught in the crossfire.
And then there's the human cost, the exploitation of vulnerable people, like the drug mules who risk their lives to smuggle cocaine across borders.
These are often desperate people who are coerced or tricked into this really dangerous work,
Yeah.
It's a tragic reminder that behind all the statistics and headlines, there are real people being exploited and harmed.
It seems like every aspect of cocaine's story, from its production to its consumption, is just riddled with these ethical dilemmas.
It really makes you question our whole relationship with it, right? We've gone from ancient uses to modern day dilemmas, from the science of its effects to, the complexities of this global drug trade.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface,
Yeah.
It's time to kind of try to synthesize all this information.
Okay, yeah.
What are the key takeaways from this deep dive? What are the things you hope our listeners really hold on to?
Well, I think the first thing is that cocaine is so much more than just a party drug.
Yeah.
Its history is intertwined with medicine, with culture, global economics. Understanding that complexity is crucial.
Absolutely. We can't oversimplify this conversation. It's it's not black and white, right?
Right.
This is a complex tapestry of social, political, and scientific threads.
And secondly, while there's this fascinating scientific story behind how cocaine actually affects your brain, we can't forget the very real and devastating consequences of addiction.
Right.
It's a disease that deserves our attention and our compassion, not stigma.
You're right. We need to approach this with empathy, understanding that addiction is a disease. It's not a moral failing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, we can't ignore the human cost of the illegal drug trade. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, the economics.
Right.
But real lives are at stake here, right?
Yeah.
The farmers, the smugglers, the users, their families even, entire communities are impacted by this illicit industry.
So where do we go from here? What can our listeners do with all of this information? Because it can feel overwhelming.
knowledge is power. By understanding the many sides of cocaine's history, its effects on the brain and the far-reaching consequences of its trafficking, we can at least start having like more informed and compassionate conversations about drug use, addiction, and policy.
You're right. It starts with awareness. It starts with challenging our own preconceived notions, right?
Yeah.
And then engaging in these really open and honest dialogue.
And don't forget about the human element here, okay? Behind the statistics, behind the headlines, there are real people battling addiction. There are individuals caught in the crosshairs of the drug trade, families struggling with the consequences. Let's approach this issue with empathy and a genuine commitment to actually finding solutions.
It's a call to action for all of us to educate ourselves, challenge that stigma, and advocate for these evidence-based policies that address both the supply side and the demand side of the equation. We can't just arrest our way out of this problem.
Exactly. We need to support harm reduction strategies. We got to make treatment accessible, and we have to address the root causes that lead people, individuals, down the path of addiction in the first place.
This deep dive has uncovered some really eye-opening information. But there's always more to learn, right?
Yeah.
It's true. We can't just throw more punishment at the problem and just hope it goes away, right?
Right.
Addiction it's complicated. It needs a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
But this whole deep dive, it wasn't just about the heavy stuff. There's part of me that's still, I don't know, stuck on those old cocoa wine ads.
Yeah, yeah.
And the idea that people once thought this was a miracle substance.
Yeah.
It makes you think about our constant desire to, I don't know, tweak our own experiences, right?
It's true. Think about it. Throughout all of history, humans have looked for ways to change their consciousness, right?
Right.
Whether that's through these ancient rituals or traditional medicines or, modern day drugs.
Right.
Cocaine's just one piece of this, much larger puzzle.
And it highlights this fine line we walk, right?
Yeah.
Between exploring and exploitation, between searching for pleasure and causing harm. Where do we even draw the line with that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
It's a question we're constantly grappling with as a society.
For sure. And it's not just about pleasure, right?
Right.
Cocaine, just like so many other substances, it can be used to numb pain, physical and emotional pain.
Right.
It's a reminder that people often turn to these substances to try to cope with tough emotions, challenging circumstances.
You've hit on something really, really important there. We can't talk about cocaine or any drug, really, without talking about the reasons why people use them.
Right.
Addiction. Often it's a symptom of deeper issues, trauma, mental health struggles, social inequities, all of that.
Absolutely. And it is so crucial to remember that people who are struggling with addiction, they're not bad people.
No.
They're not flawed. They're often just trying to cope, with difficult emotions or really difficult life circumstances in the best way they know how at that time.
That's a powerful message. And we need more of that. We need more compassion, more understanding, not judgment in this conversation.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder if we're constantly looking for new ways to, I don't know, to feel good or to numb pain. What does that mean for the future of something like cocaine? Will it always have this role in society? Yeah. Will it continue to evolve?
I mean, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Will we see a change in how we view drug use at all? Will we find better ways to treat addiction?
Yeah.
And what about the potential for cocaine to be harnessed for, for medical or even therapeutic purposes in ways that we haven't even thought of yet? There are so many possibilities, so many unknowns.
It's both exciting and a little daunting to think about.
It really is. But one thing is for sure. The story of cocaine, it's not over. It's ongoing. It's a narrative that's going to continue to challenge us and intrigue us and really force us to confront some uncomfortable things about ourselves as humans.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this sense of awe, really, at how complex just this one substance is.
Yeah.
And its impact on humanity.
It's wild. It really is a story of science and history and culture and the human desire to explore the full spectrum of consciousness.
It's a story that I think asks us to look beyond what we see on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
to challenge our own assumptions.
Wow.
And to approach this whole thing with curiosity and compassion.
Well said. Well said. And if there's like one thing that I hope our listeners take away from this whole deep dive, from this conversation, it's that, knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about something like cocaine, the more we understand about ourselves, the better equipped we are to really face those challenges head on, to advocate for more humane and more effective approaches to drug use and to addiction.
Absolutely. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope this has kind of sparked your curiosity and inspired you guys to keep exploring the world around you with open minds and a thirst for knowledge. Until next time, keep asking those questions, keep learning, keep diving deep.